All doctors to the ER.
Do these guys have any idea what they are talking about?
Get squared away.
Spiritual.
Get squared away.
Emotional.
Get squared away.
Mental.
Get squared away.
Physical.
The podcast that'll help you get squared away.
All right, back with another episode. I think we kind of need to open this one up with this Ukraine-Russian stuff.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's
we have to, right?
One,
like
yeah.
That's what's going on in the world right now. It's that is the big info, the big news. What's the word on your side? I mean, I know you have a connection to a lot different base of people than I do.
I mean, there's a lot of opinions going on right now. I mean, Zelensky is probably the biggest surprise. I mean, talking about a non-politician that gets in and just the amount of cojones he has leading from the front.
He's a leader.
Yeah, that's what you're called to do. And it's ironic how our administration offered to basically evacuate him. And, it's no surprise. I mean, right now, even if the press is asking questions to our current commander in chief, he bails out as quick as he can. So, guys like us, that's what we look at, the guys that lead from the front.
Right. And that's like the right thing right now. I'm like, is it possible? And I know it really isn't, but is it possible for the world, right? The leaders of the world, is it possible for 100, 200,000 people from around the world to just end up at that point, like helping Russia or helping Ukraine, this is a fight of communism on democracy. That's what this is.
Yeah. Not if you ask the Democrats. So, their idea of threat to democracy is January 6th, but it's come to this point where Russia's got, 150,000 plus troops surrounded and they've been just attacking.
Do you see the Snake Island?
Yeah.
God, I love that. If you guys aren't aware, Snake Island is a small island off the coast of Ukraine, and there's 13 Ukrainian troops that were sitting on this island with a Russian warship basically approaching, and I think all they had was shells, right? Like they were just shelling them.
Yeah. And
they were shelling them, and as the warship got to a point where they knew that they were toast, they turn on the loudspeaker and they just start yelling, "Go fuck yourself," in Ukrainian to these Russians. Like they're going out on their shield, right? Like this is what democracy is about, is this independent spirit fighting for their freedom.
Yeah. And I think that's the best takeaway from this. Yesterday I'm hearing stories about, families that were going to be split, but they're not because even the wives took up arms. And, we hear so much on the mainstream media about the refugees, but what about the people that, I don't know if you saw, I posted a story of the 81-year-old guy goes in there with a little suitcase with one, 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush to make sure, his teeth, his pearly whites are good. And he's doing it for his grandkids. This is, it almost chokes you up a little bit.
It does.
Because the people there, they've been a war-torn country for years. They don't have a lot. You see, they have their coffee shops, they have their retail stores and whatnot, but these people aren't so distracted like we are in a society that, when shit hits the fan, guess what? Everybody takes arms and they're staying there. They're not running.
Yeah, so. And they're lining up around the block waiting to get arms if they don't have them from the local police station. Like it's time. Like we've not really lived through this. Like it's been interesting because the wars that we've seen have kind of been like wars of idealism, right? Taiwan, trying to take Taiwan, but that never came to.
It's gonna be next.
So I feel like I feel like there has to be something deeper to this. Like there's a timing behind Putin deciding right now to do this.
Yeah.
And is it a smokescreen, right? Like, is it look over here and then China goes in?
Yeah.
There's something else going on, or is it because Ukraine was getting to a point that they were no longer going to be able for Russia to take them because they were becoming friendly with NATO and becoming more close allies with the rest of Europe? Or what is it? What caused it to be this time right now?
I mean, from Putin's side, I think that's probably the huge, that's probably the biggest point is that, yeah, they were getting close to NATO because if, when this all started, he had threatened at anybody that intervened, particularly Finland and Sweden, because obviously, they're flirting with NATO also. But NATO is not as strong as it was, a year and a half ago because there's no leadership in there.
Yeah.
And there's no accountability of contribution in there as well either. So, everything points to a lot of root causes, and a lot of root causes happen in January. So energy independence is a huge one. I mean, we basically in January gave Russia, pretty much a huge paycheck. I mean, we're buying 565,000 barrels a day from them.
I mean, they run the pipeline that is keeping a lot of European countries in energy.
Yeah. And we were importing and we were energy dependent, a year plus ago.
Yeah.
And now just to appease a bunch of, green lighters.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing, right? Like we can't necessarily take the energy that we're using and drop it. We have to create enough to be energy independent with the amount of energy that we're using until we can get the amount of energy that we're using to reduce. And that's like that was their thing, is like, we don't want to create the amount of energy that we're using. We don't want to create that independently. So we're going to get it from outside the country. Well, the thing is that all of a sudden creates security issues because then we're reliant on that external energy.
Yeah.
You can create the amount of energy that your country needs while you're trying to reduce the amount of energy that your country needs, right? Like it's a budget. And right now we're only looking at the top end of the budget. We're only looking at how do we fill all of the needs that we have? Well, we can fill all the needs that we have here and try to reduce at the same time. Like that's the fucked up thing that we're completely missing.
Yeah. Well,
or this administration is completely missing.
This administration is they're just kids. They're idiots. And the problem we have is we were in a plus situation. We were exporting oil too. So, that was keeping all the costs down. We were energy independent. And we're not paying Russia, this massive amounts of dollars. And that's the problem, is that you got a power hungry leader over there. And now you're basically funding this guy. I mean, it goes back to the administration before Trump. You got Obama sending cash over to the Iranians. And how's everything start? You need money to start everything. And I think that's the biggest thing I think that upsets most of the sources I know, is how this thing really got started. I mean, we had everybody at bay, and you have to keep dictators at bay. I mean, that's the only way to take care of a bully, right? And that's what, the bully's doing right now is pushing hard. He doesn't care how many people die on his end. I mean, I think if you interviewed, the word from the ground is a lot of these Russian soldiers don't even want to, they look at the Ukrainians as kind of like their brothers. So they're firing on their own people. So, and there's a lot of relationships cross border. So what is this doing? I mean, you saw, 1,800 or 1,700 people that protested this all got arrested, or I should say 1,700 got arrested. How many that were there protesting?
Yeah, you got balls if you're protesting in Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not protesting in the United States. Protesting in the United States, okay, you do something wrong, maybe you're going to get a ticket, right? Or a fine, or get pepper sprayed. No. Like, this is Russia. If you get caught protesting, you might disappear.
Yeah. Yeah, and tactically, it's still garbage again. I mean, every time it seems like the Soviets try to, show their tactical superiority, it's like a big chaotic mess.
Yeah, did you see this Ghost of Kiev?
Yeah.
Dude, I don't, and the thing is this might be false, it might be true. But if it's true, this is one independent, unknown, not affiliated person flying a MiG that shot down 6 Russian planes in the first day.
Yeah.
If that's true,
those are the war hero stories that
right. Those are awesome.
Pass on.
And who knows? Maybe it's not true. I was talking to my brother No, not my brother. I was talking to Chris this morning, and he was like, yeah, talking about it. And he's like, I can't imagine like what the Trump tweets would be right now if he was in office. Right. And I was like, oh, the first thing he would do is try to claim the ghost of Kiev as like an American soldier that we like secretly sent over. Like, I'm not saying that it's an American, but nobody's saying that it's not an American. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just the troll bait.
Yeah. And that's the one thing, I mean, I got to respect about these Ukrainians is just how humble they are. And just the amount of cojones on all of them, just they're buckling down. They're holding back. You know, I think they're in the hundreds right now for casualties. I forgot what the count was last night, but man, it's tough. And it's tough to watch them drop their kids off, and you know the wives and kids are basically fleeing as refugees. Their homes are getting destroyed, and I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but I mean, imagine if you had to leave your house and gather everything that you own that you can carry, and that's it. You know, they got front backpacks tied to the front, backpacks to the back. Kids have 2 backpacks. This is everything you got, and now you're told to leave your country.
Yeah, and this is the first time that we've been through something like this where you can watch it nearly in real time on social media.
Yeah.
Like you can pull up TikTok feeds, you can pull up some Instagram feeds, not so much with Instagram and Facebook because they're a little bit more buckled down. But I mean, you can watch this stuff. You can watch people with their front camera on with, bombs going over their shoulders and they're running.
Yeah. Thanks to Elon.
Yeah.
With
right.
The Starlink.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Starlink is pretty awesome. Like whether you want to, it is a neural network or not a neural network. It is a network of satellites that is providing internet via satellite internet around the world. And the idea is that he gets this thing up to a point where it completely connects and it's far enough away that at all times, your network can see this satellite can beam it to this satellite and then to this satellite and then to this satellite. And then it can come back down. And it's, if you figure the way that angles work and the way that science works is that gets to a certain point, the entire world can have internet that is unregulated and unmanipulated by governments.
Yeah.
Until it is. I mean, like that's the weird thing, right? Like until it is.
Yeah. And I don't know. Question, but kudos to Elon on that one.
Yeah. Right.
So
we got one up. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I think we kind of had to touch on that. I mean, it's one of the biggest news stories right now. And it is something that I would hope would never happen to us. But if it ever did, I would hope that we stood up the way that the Ukrainians are standing up.
Yeah. Well, I would expect that because we are probably the most, I guess, armed, citizen
right now we
population.
Right now we are.
What are you saying?
I'm not saying that is the goal of the anti-gun community, but I'm saying that it could be a very negative outcome if the anti-gun community was able to get some of the things that it wants, would be that we would not be able to stand up the way that we could right now. Plus, how many generations are we away from losing, that interest, right? Like if you think about just the difference in the average human being from 30 years ago to now, like, cause this isn't a short game, right? China, Russia, like they're not playing short games. They're playing the long, playing the long game.
China's been playing a long game for a while.
So if you can slowly deter the younger generations from being interested in the independence, the firearm community, the strength, the masculinity, all the things that keep our country safe, right? Like you come in, let's not argue right now. Let's argue 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You try to invade the United States 20 years ago. Good luck. Now we have more guns, but do we have more people that know how to use guns? That's arguable, right?
That's a fair assessment. I mean, I don't see kids that have a lot of interest in that or gun safety. I mean, if it's anything like that, it's video games.
Yeah.
But after this, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a big argument for 2A right now.
Yeah. So maybe we all have our own cyborgs that we can play from a game controller.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I know it's not ideal, but like
You're talking about like an iRobot environment where we all have our own little C-3PO running around the house.
that we're like playing as a game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, have you seen any of the Boston robotics stuff? Because Google bought Boston Robotics,
yeah.
right? Have you seen some of the stuff they create?
Oh, as far as some of those robot tests?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, you don't think about, when we think about robots as human beings, and maybe not everybody, but like I think about, and we will get to the topic of the day. Hold on. Just please hold. Give me 2 more minutes. When I think about robots, my brain is not as malleable as someone who's in that community. So I think of robots as like humanistic humanoids, right? Like robot versions
movies.
of humans, right? What you've seen in the movies, the idea of, you know, like you said, C-3PO, like that whole idea. And whoa, that'd be cool if you created a human robot that could lift twice as much or 5 times as much as a human or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But no, it's a totally different ball game when you have the intelligence and the mechanics to go completely out of the humanoid ideal. Then all of a sudden you're creating things that move not 3 times as fast as a human, but 50 times as fast as a human, right?
Oh yeah.
And doesn't have, you know, the aiming capabilities of the best sniper. No. We're talking like 100 times better than the best sniper and all this crazy shit. Like,
yeah, now you're talking Star Wars kind of stuff here.
but that's where it's going to end up.
Right. I mean, it's a progression.
Yeah.
Obviously, scientific progression. If you want to see the closest example for us, about an hour and a half south of here, there's a restaurant called Sushi Station. I don't know if I showed you that video. But
No, not at all. I've never heard of this.
So they got rid of the host. So there's no host anymore when you come in. The host is a robot.
Shut up.
So somebody...
Where is this at?
It's in just before Schaumburg. So it's off the... I think it's on Sutton Road.
Oh, I'm going.
Yeah. So it's on the way to Schaumburg. I can tell you, but just look up Sushi
All right,
Station.
yeah, Sushi Station. Got it.
Literally, yeah, it's one of those restaurants you walk in and then the conveyor belt goes around and they put different sushi plates and you just grab the plates as you go, pay for whatever color plates they are. You know, in the end, it's like $3 this plate, $4 that plate.
Okay.
And, you know, it's like an Asian based
I gotta go get
restaurant.
sushi with you sometime. I don't know. My sushi is like legit, like California rolls and tempura shrimp rolls.
Yeah, you're gonna
like,
be kind of short
I need
on
real
that.
sushi.
That's like 5% of the sushi that's in there. But the you walk in, they eliminated the host, and it's basically this like looks like a R2D2 with shelves on it because it looks like it's getting ready that it's also going to deliver the special plates that you ordered, and it literally knows where to take you to what seats open, sits you down, and then lets you go. I'll have to send you a video. I got it.
It's just it's wild, the idea of what could be done if you were creating a specific thing, like, right? Because we're awesome and we've been not bioengineered, but we've evolved to do so many different things, right?
Yeah.
We've evolved to be able to run fast, but also run miles. And we've evolved to be strong, but also operate on the amount of energy that we can get. And we've evolved to be like this balanced human that's able to do so many different things. But if you were talking about creating, you know, little robots that are specialized in specific things, that means you get to get rid of all the other dead weight that has nothing to do with whatever that specific thing is that you're creating for.
Yeah.
That shit's scary.
Yeah. And the thing is that AI can learn as you go.
Well, we've talked about that before, right? Like the idea that once AI can program itself, it will do 10,000 years worth of evolution in the first like 16 months or something.
Yeah. Because we're going to have to find John Connor and, stop this before it goes too far.
Yeah. It's going to happen. That's the weird thing. That's the singularity, right? Like it's going to happen at some point in time. How do you program that so that it is the idea of what it wants, because you're programming it. Whoever's programming it is programming in what its goal is. So how do you program it as the even let's get even tighter and say that you are programming it for the best outcome for human beings possible, right? So that's what we're programmed for. How do you define what the best outcome for human beings possible is?
I don't know.
You go like you or I, and we're like, all right, I'm going to have a cheat day. I'm going to go get some ice cream. And your robot slams the ice cream out of your hand. It's like, no ice cream for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like, because that's not what's best for you. But is it? It might be best for your mental health, but it's not best for your physical health.
Yeah. Would it ever get to a point where a robot would logically think enough to exterminate human beings?
That's that. So my thought is
Wouldn't that involve
would be
emotion?
the idea, right? I don't think that would involve emotion. I think that would be a calculated.
If it thinks that we're a pestilence.
So I don't think it would. If you programmed it to be the most positive outcome for human beings, I don't think it would ever eradicate human beings. But what it may do is it may get to a point where it decides that reproduction is too over the top, right? We're having too many babies. So then it starts to reduce reproduction in a certain percentage of the population. Well, that's all good if you look at that as an overall whole, right? Like, all right, 10% of the population is not going to be able to reproduce.
Yeah.
But when you get down to the N of one, like the one person, like if you're the one person that they're like, well, you're the 1 out of 10 people in this country that doesn't get to reproduce, then you're done.
Yeah. You got that. And you ever seen the movie Minority Report?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, if you let AI start to predict, okay, so-and-so is probably going to commit a crime or a felon or whatnot, well, we're just going to exterminate the felons, right? Well, now where do you draw the line on that one?
Yeah.
So that could end up being, all of a sudden we got the Terminator mixed with Minority Report and everything else.
Oh, man.
iRobot.
So crazy.
So, yeah, something to think about.
All right. I digress. Today's podcast.
That rabbit hole.
Today's podcast is about finding truthful information and truthful news.
Yep. And how do you process that, huh?
Go ahead. Start us out.
All right. I'm starting to hate Google, by the way. So I look up critical thinking Google, and it gives me basically Forbes definition, gives me all the, left-wing media outlet definitions of what that is, right? And it's funny because it's actually true. I mean, it says critical thinking means seeking out new information, especially facts that might run contrary to what you believe, and being willing to change your mind. So,
yeah,
that's coming from the left-wing media.
Yeah. Well, that's a weird thing too is, and I have it in my notes further down, but since you opened it up with that, we might as well get to that right away.
Yeah.
Depending on how you search for something is going to depend on the type of information that you get, right? So if I search, where's my note on this thing? So if let's use the COVID thing, right? Because we talk about this all the time and we talk about cloth masks, right? So if I search effectiveness of cloth masks, COVID-19, my search results, no matter what I use, and I don't use Google anymore unless I'm looking for specific things, because Google is still by far the best if you are looking for if you're trying to figure out how to fix your Spotify, right? Like your Spotify is broken and you're trying to figure out from forums what the best way is to fix your Spotify to make it so it works through your Bluetooth all the time, right? And so we just did this morning. My wife's Spotify was all jacked up, and every time you were on Bluetooth, it would like put the app to sleep and it would pause. So we had to fix that, right? Still use Google for that. Yeah. But otherwise, I use Brave.
Okay, I was going to ask you which one you...
Yeah, I use Brave search engine. So get back to what I was saying. If you search effectiveness of cloth masks, COVID-19, you're going to get a certain amount of search results, right? If you search cloth masks don't work or cloth masks don't work for COVID-19, you're going to get a totally different opinion-based returns. And that's what you're going to get for your search engine. So if you do the first search, effectiveness of cloth masks, you'll be able to read a lot of some shitty, some good, but this is what we're going to get into here. How do you disseminate the differences? And you can see cloth masks do have some effectiveness, but they're not super effective, right? And that's probably where the real answer is. It's not extreme. It's not they don't have any effectiveness, and it's not they're going to save you.
Right.
The answer is somewhere in the middle. And depending on how you search these things, you have to be intelligent about you have to have an unbiased search before you're going to get unbiased results. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
And ignore the top 5 things that pop up when you start typing in anything.
Oh, I know.
Because they are manipulating you with what they are giving you back to fill in your search.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I remember, I think Rogan posted something last week about that.
Well, he had a great podcast. I don't remember which one it was. You would have to go back and figure out which one it was, but it was with a guy who his entire company does research on media manipulation.
Oh, yeah, I heard that one
and
too.
that one was awesome. And that's where you could
that's where I heard
start
about
to
Brave.
see. Yes. Yep. And that's where I heard about Brave too.
Then realized DuckDuckGo wasn't as
So I get
independent
I
as
guess
it
you
was.
guys probably listen to this. If you listen to us, you probably listen to Rogan, but DuckDuckGo is a good browser, except for DuckDuckGo still uses Google's blacklists and Google's lists of sites that you can't go off of, which is the problem with basically all browsers are still running a Google backbone. They're going through some sort of Google portal. They're going through some sort of Google filter before they're giving you your information. Whereas Brave does not run off of any Google backbone or any Google filters, which is good, but Google got huge for a reason, because it's an awesome search engine.
Yeah.
So if you're searching for how to fix things or something super specific, Google is still the best search engine.
Yeah. And I've been ramping up on Brave. For those of you that don't know the background on Brave, it's basically created by the guy that created Firefox. Correct?
Yes.
So yeah, it seems to be, from a programming side, really stable.
Yeah.
And he just keeps, building and building and building it. So so far I like it.
Yeah.
But just like you, if I need to fix something,
Yeah.
it's like Google has so many forks that,
Yes.
unfortunately, I go to Google for some of those. I go to Safari for some of those.
Yeah.
So, but you can definitely tell when you're searching something, what you're getting is, is kind of steered.
So what is bias? We should probably define bias first of all, because that's kind of going to be the underpinning of this, because we're looking for unbiased, or we're trying to find unbiased information.
What's the Webster's, Merriam-Webster's? Prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person or group compared with another.
So basically a bias is biased versus unbiased is, in this context of what we're searching for, is we're searching for news outlets, news stories, journalists, any sort of information that is as close to unbiased as you can get. And the bias, you got to realize bias is a scale. So you're not going to be biased versus unbiased. You're going to be extremely biased versus not so biased. That's kind of what we're going to find, right? And so a lot of what we're going to talk about is idealism and ideological biases. So I don't even want to say political biases. I want to say ideological biases, because you're going to have, let's say, a scale from conservatism to liberalism, not right, left, but conservatism to liberalism. And you're going to be somewhere on that biased scale, dead center being unbiased at all, which is very rare.
Yeah. And to preface this talk a little bit late, this is a question that I get a lot, and I'm not sure, maybe it's because I'm an independent, is people will ask me, okay, well, what news sources do you use? Where do you get your information from? And that's, what I'm basing this on. And hopefully that helps some of our listeners here to kind of walk through that process instead of, just flipping on the news and just digesting every little thing that you're hearing. Because it's interesting, like the talk we had when you just got here this morning was, what were we talking about again? Just about how we intake information.
Yeah.
Was that mass? I don't want to say mass psychosis was the first thing that popped in my head, but
Yeah, no, that wasn't it. I can't even remember what it was.
But anyway,
Yeah.
screw that one.
Yeah,
Lost
yeah,
my
yeah.
train of thought here.
Yeah.
So,
Scratch that.
but I don't know what to tell people other than I go through a lot of different sources. And you have to, apply that critical thinking, and you have to come to the point where you don't have that bias. We all have a certain bias.
There's always going to be an underlying bias. That's the thing. And one thing is there's a lot of things to define here. not necessarily before, but as we're breaking this down. And an echo chamber is one thing we need to define.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have a problem with creating their own echo chamber, right? Because we have an emotional reaction to information. We do. It's impossible to not have an emotional reaction to information. We evolved over a few 100,000 years of information that we get coming in, determining the safety of us and our family, right? So in the last 50, really the last 25 years, the amount of information that we have coming in is 10,000 times more than we've ever dealt with, 100,000 times more than we've ever dealt with. I don't even know what the real number would be, but it's so we're constantly having to process information. Whereas, when we lived in caves and there was Dunbar's number, right? Like we were in tribes of like 140 people is the max that they ever saw tribes on average. And then when it got bigger than that, it would split up because that's the most amount of people that you can your brain is able to kind of register their personalities and kind of work with their personalities, about 140. So tribes. Yeah.
I'm just counting how many episodes we get tribes in.
Every time. Tribes, COVID-19. I can't even think of anything else we talk about as much.
It's tribes.
But so the thing is we would maybe deal with life-changing information a few times a day. And we would process that information and see, all right, so-and-so saw a band of, whatever monkeys going over the hill. And we're like, all right, is that going to be a problem? Well, they're these small monkeys. We don't really have to worry about them. They could mean food, right? So we would process this. Now, all of a sudden, like every time you open your phone, you're dealing with this amount of information. So 100, 200, 300 times a day, you're dealing with this type of information. So we make this emotional connection to the information. And when we make an emotional connection to the information, when it's something that we don't like, we have a negative emotion. And because we are not necessarily scared of negative emotions, but we try to push negative emotions away because negative is bad, right? We all of a sudden will stop looking at that news source that gives us negative feelings, or we'll stop reading tweets from that person who gives us negative emotions. We will stop looking at the pictures that the one friend sends us because they're a little bit on the liberal side and it gives us a negative information, right? And slowly over time, we create this echo chamber, which is anything that we believe in is just constantly being thrown back at us because we've completely gotten rid of all of the negative information that comes towards us. And it's not necessarily negative. Like a lot of this stuff is not negative or positive, but it gives us negative emotion because we don't agree with it. And so we create an echo chamber. And the worst thing with an echo chamber is you're legitimately just being told everything that you want. You're never questioning your own thoughts.
Oh, exactly.
You're like, oh, I'm right. The average, I think 90% of people questioned think that their intelligence is above average. 90% of people questioned thinks that they're more intelligent than the average human. That number doesn't work out. Average would be the mean, right? The 50% line. That means 40% of those people are completely full of shit.
Yeah. And that's based on what?
They did a bunch of college studies. College professors, 94%. They're even worse than the average person with their own ideal of their own intellect. But you got to think like that right there, just that simple fact, 90% of people think that they are smarter than the average human. That means that you are looking at your echo chamber. You're thinking that it's right because it is telling you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And then you're making emotional decisions off of that echo chamber.
Yep.
You need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to, like you said in your definition of critical thinking, you need to be able to read something from a 0 or close to 0 emotional bias and then process the information.
Yeah.
So how do we, when we're reading something that we don't agree with, how do we figure out if it's bullshit?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have to expose yourself to all the contrary opinions and contrary,
Oh, that hurts.
News sources too.
That hurts.
It does hurt. But I found out years ago, I mean, when I was traveling easily once a week. And when you're sitting in airports, when you're sitting in public spaces, I mean, what dominated the TVs? CNN.
Yeah.
Every time you're in an airport, CNN was in there. I'm an independent. So, I'm being fed CNN. So when I would get to the hotel, I would put on Fox News and, and compare the two. And sometimes it was so drastically horrible and drastically different that, you had to find some truth in the middle. We talk about that a lot, right?
Yep.
In the middle, in that little gray area, that's somewhere in
that's
there.
Where most of the
that's
truth
where
is.
the truth is. And I think that helped a lot. And I was just forced exposed to it, I mean, I don't like Rachel Maddow. I think she's a complete moron, but sometimes I was forced to, that was what was on the TV at the time. But instead of getting, butthurt about it, you listen and you parse through some of the BS compared to some of the, the other news. And then you start looking for, okay, well, are there independent, news stations out there or, news sources out there that I can look at and just do a little bit of research myself. And that's how I've done it. And it just scares me. The people that ask me that question are people, for one, I won't mention his name, but, he thinks CNN is gospel truth, right? And he thinks Fox News, everything they say is a lie. And I ask him, well, okay, how much do you watch Fox News? Well, I don't watch them because everything's a lie. Well, then how do you know everything's a lie? And I get that a lot. It's either one side or the other. It's kind of like we talk about it. They create their own echo chamber and they stay in it.
Yep.
And then they wonder why their thoughts, when it comes time to voting, they're so uninformed. They're just parroting what they've been told in that echo chamber, and they just keep, regurgitating that crap.
I came across this awesome resource, and I'm gonna link it in the podcast notes so that everybody can use it. But it is mediabiasfactcheck.com. And so this mediabiasfactcheck.com has, from the smallest local news to the biggest, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and it grades them on a scale of bias. And then it has a full list of the least biased. Really? So I started going, it's awesome. It's an awesome resource. And so I started going through that list of least biased. And a lot of them are smaller local stations, but a lot of them are specific to certain things, right? So like one of them that I was looking at earlier today was like borderpatrol.com or bordernews.com or something like that.
What was the main site?
Mediabiasfactcheck.com. And so I was able to start to look at specific news sources that were at the root of what I was trying to figure out, right? So this bordernews.com or whatever it was, I would have to look it up again to be able to tell you which one it was gave me like the most detailed information, but these were not biased or opinionated news stories. Most of them, they were fact based in, this certain area called the Yuma Gap is where we were seeing 6,000 people come across, and they would immediately sit when they got onto the American side and ask for political asylum. Right. And now we're down to about 1,000, but it's still straining. And this is all information that is coming from this one source. So if I want to then find sources on, what a big change that the government is going to do on climate change, right? Then I can try to look for some more weather climate based unbiased news sources. And it's a really good resource.
Yeah. I was just taking a look at it, trying to see who was advertising on there too.
Pull up CNN. It's it's on the far bias. Fox News is on the far bias. Like they're hitting them on the head. Like they've got a lot of them like very much figured out.
So they're calling CNN far bias or Fox News far bias?
Yeah, Fox News is far bias right, CNN far bias left.
Oh yeah.
Some of the least bias was like C-SPAN, Foreign Policy, and Financial Times. Those were some that I wrote down that were least biased.
How about Al Jazeera?
I didn't see Al Jazeera. You know what's funny is with
it is left. Ooh,
with all this Russian stuff going on, I used to use RT.
Really?
Yeah. Do you ever use RT?
No.
So Russia Today, actually a realistically good news source for anything that doesn't involve Russia. Wow. If it involves Russia, clearly there's a bias. But anything that doesn't involve Russia, it was actually a pretty good one. And now I see that like Anonymous just pulled down RT, like they crashed RT's site. I think,
really?
yeah, with all this stuff going on because it was becoming propagandistic. Is that a word?
Oh, really? So Anonymous took him down.
Apparently, I did not fact check that, so hold up on spouting that to anybody. But
I know Anonymous took down a bunch of crap in Russia, but they got it back up. But wow, yeah, I mean, to check that out. So mediabiasfactcheck.com.
Another thing that I want to really put out there as an important distinction is you motherfuckers need to read articles. You cannot just read the headlines and then tell me something about it or forward it, or in the middle of a conversation, you're like, yeah, I saw yesterday that this and this happened. Yeah. Right? Because we live in the time of clickbait. Like, you have to realize that all of these businesses are for profit. These are not nonprofit organizations. And if they're for profit, that means that they need people to read their articles. Yeah. And if you just put a really bland title on an article, nobody's going to read it. Yeah. So read the article. Because so many times I see a clickbait title and then I read the article and it's not even in line with what they said.
Yes. I totally understand that. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, there's some guys that I follow that I really like their post. I mean, Dan Bongino is a guy that, has a good history. I mean, the guy's been in national security, very outspoken, has his own, I think he's, I forgot what his show is, but he's on Fox now as well. But his posts sometimes are, the headline is the grabber. Yeah. And that frustrates me because, sometimes I'll click on it and be like, oh, this has nothing to do with the headline.
But we have to, because we live in an information age, like not information age, an attention age. Like the whole goal is to keep attention. It's attention, right? Like we need to keep people's attention with this podcast. If we don't keep their attention, they don't listen. If they don't listen, this makes no sense to do every day or every week. Yeah. Right? Like, we live in an attention age. So I understand the clickbait, but you have to be smart enough to understand that there's going to be clickbait titles. You have to read the article. Yeah. Once you start reading the articles, you need to be able to separate op-eds, right? Opinion op-ed versus fact-based news. Yeah. Because most, even biased news sources will have a news article and then op-eds based on the news, right? And the op-ed is where you start to hear, and this is one way that you can start to disseminate the bullshit from the real, is when you start to get more opinion words in an article. We think, probably, it's likely, stuff like that, right? Like, when you can start to pull out opinions when you're reading something and it's not fact. It's not, this is what's happening. There's this many troops. This is the climate change that we've seen over the past 100 years. When they start to say, it's likely that we will see this over the next 25 years. Well, that's an opinion. Right. Right?
Yeah. And that's, I think, where journalism and opinion op-eds are getting really blurry.
Yes. And another way to spot propagandic news stories are no sources, right? When you get to the bottom of something that starts to claim it's quoting science, but there's no sources for that science. Yeah. It's bullshit. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bullshit, but it means that basically you can't trust it. It might be real, but it also might not be.
Hey, Fauci is a science dude.
Yeah.
He is science.
More than likely, real news is not overly negative or overly positive. Right. Right. Yeah, and that's so when you read something that's overly negative or overly positive, you might as well be reading like Babylon Bee or The Onion or SOCOM News.
Well, that's really extreme.
I mean, that's satire, right? Like, we understand that that's satire.
Some people don't.
I know. That's the problem.
I've experienced that, and it's just hilarious. Because I love the Babylon Bee.
I know, it's so funny.
They're awesome, and they're really hitting it hard right now.
SOCOM News is a good one, too, if you don't follow them. SOCOM News is funny. They had a post.
Soft rep, okay.
They had a post today that was like Brian. What was the guy that claimed to be in the helicopter crash in Afghanistan? What was his name? Brian Gumble. Was it Brian Gumble? No, it wasn't Brian Gumble.
Journalism?
Yeah.
Journalist?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah. So, all right, here I pulled it up. Brian Williams. That's who it was. So Brian Williams told a story back in 2003, I believe, that the helicopter he was riding in was forced down by enemy fire, and it was false. He wasn't fired on. So this is all found out to be bullshit. So then SOCOM News had a story today. Alert, Brian Williams shot down in Ukrainian helicopter. Just like, and so that shit's funny, right? But that's all satire, you know? Right. And so you have to understand that satire is literally, it's so extreme that it's meant to be funny.
Yeah. But when Hillary Clinton got,
can we get like a satire
under sniper fire?
Can we get like a satire logo on the bottom of all news stories that are satire? Not for you and I, because you and I and most people can read these and be like, oh, duh, it's the Babylon Bee. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah. But like people will send them to you. Like, did you see this? And like, yeah, did you know where it's from?
I know. Oh, I've gotten that a couple times, but I still remember, the first time I reposted a Babylon Bee with the Babylon Bee logo on it. I had some people DM that were just livid. You're posting false information. Well, no shit, Sherlock.
Right? This is funny. You never told a joke before, right? Like, come on.
Yeah, you can't believe this is real. I'm like, yeah, it's not real.
Duh.
I'm not an idiot. Hey, just checked a 1440 newsletter. So that's one of the new ones that came out that claims it just wants to report the news.
Okay.
And that actually is least bias.
Good.
It's high in factual reporting.
Good.
According to your mediabiasfactcheck.com.
And it's fairly new. So I think the way that they do a lot of that bias is they go off of how much fact checking has been done and shit has been found false. That has a lot to do with it.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully they stay unbiased, right?
Yeah. I should check News Center because I have a list. I mean, I try to find the most independent news sources, but a lot of times it doesn't turn out that way.
Yeah.
News Center. Looks like that's not even on here yet.
Oh. But anything medical, PubMed, anything that you're looking for medical, and if you're going to read a PubMed article, you have to take a second. You're not going to be able to read it and just get it immediately, because a lot of those articles, you might have to search a few articles to find what you're looking for specifically. And you're going to have to be able to understand a little bit of the conclusion, because a lot of it's very science-based. But after trying a little bit, you're going to start to understand it, and you're going to be able to pull up things on PubMed that you are now using the information that these journalists are using to write op-eds. So you've gone directly to the source when you start to be able to understand PubMed. And PubMed's all medical stuff, so you can't use that for political or anything like that. But
yeah, and it's important too. I mean, get some sources from outside of the country.
Yeah.
One I find entertaining, I don't know why, is Sky News Australia.
Okay.
You ever?
No, never checked it out.
It's just, I mean, it's journalism, but, sometimes they get into their own personal opinions.
Aussies are crazy.
Yeah, they are crazy. I want to check what it says here. Oh, Sky News has more of a right bias.
Ah, see?
But Sky News UK, which sometimes I watch, is least biased.
Oh, that's good.
Wow. So, yeah, there's a lot out there other than just what you're turning on the TV to check. I mean, I don't know what you think. OAN is pretty far right. Newsmax, I think, is right.
Newsmax is pretty far right. Yeah, I believe so.
I mean, Daily Wire is right. I mean, they claim to be right, but I just find that I don't know, Ben Shapiro's a different dude.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's an independent thinker.
Yeah.
He's very much an independent thinker. Like, he is.
He'll call it out as it is.
Yep. Which I respect the shit out of that.
Yeah. And, let's get into the commentators. I mean, do you follow Tim Pool?
No.
So Tim Pool was, I think it was far left. And then as he started, doing more critical thinking, now he's more kind of a right center, kind of like Rogan.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Rogan a couple of weeks ago, I said, he's a liberal.
He's a classic liberal, right? Like he's almost libertarian with, a little bit stronger views on foreign policy and stuff like that. Like that's basically where he is. Yeah, he's not far right. Like
I don't think he's even right at all, really.
So there's some things that he's right on, right? Like not far right, but he's a little bit further right on 2A stuff and on independence and some sort of he's extremely socially liberal. Right. Do whatever you want, whenever you want, as long as it doesn't affect me, which is, I fall in line with a lot of those guys.
Yeah,
I do. Like, I don't care.
Yeah. And I don't know if you ever watched Bill Maher.
Yep.
So Bill Maher, I mean, I don't agree with a lot of his stuff.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, when he was on mainstream TV. But now that he's got his own special, I forget what was it, on HBO or something.
Yeah.
He's starting to open up a lot. And a lot of the common sense stuff that he drives is pretty spot on. But I mean, I'll listen to him even back then when he was, you know, suffering from TDS.
Yeah.
You know, Jon Stewart, probably a guy that has had, you know, I don't like him, but I'll still listen to him. I mean, he's done a lot of good work for a guy that I, you know, mostly disagree with. You know, stuff he did for 9/11.
Yeah.
Those survivors, and, you know, some of the BS he did with, what's that guy, that late night show guy who's a moron. Guy with the glasses, skinny dude. Stephen Colbert.
Colbert, there you go.
Where they did the Wuhan lab leak, you know, like a year and a half later.
Yeah.
I think that was staged.
Yeah. Making a ton of fun of it.
Yeah, that's my opinion on that. But I think, you know, they're just tools to help walk back any issues that the left has had.
Well, and that's funny because, you know, we were talking about this the other day, but a lot of the stuff that was almost comedically satire or considered, you know, fake news or tinfoil hat is like now they're starting to, it's almost like a lot of the higher ups in the government agencies are like, oh, we need to try to save some credibility. So like maybe we should start talking about natural immunity, like just kind of mention it a little bit so that people will start to maybe trust us again. Right. Like they're almost like, they're like, well, all right, let's talk about this a little bit.
Yeah. Now they're backing off the COVID a little bit here. So, yeah. You ever listen to Hodge Twins?
Yeah. They're funny.
I don't know what you call them. I don't know if it's comedy, but I get a lot of information.
Comedic take on real issues, I guess, right? Like it's entertainment. It is entertainment, but it's entertainment news, right?
I guess you'd call it that.
Entertainment news. That's what I would call it. Now that I think about it. Yeah. Like
it's kind of, unfiltered.
Yep.
Unscripted. Yeah. I think it's pretty good, but
I think, you know, one thing we really need to focus on here is that 50 years ago, we were spoon-fed whatever the 5 major news networks wanted to tell us, or 3 major news network wanted to tell us.
That's
right?
all there was.
That's all there was. You got some news. You could get a newspaper, or you could listen to the news on the radio, or watch the news on TV. But it was mostly from the same people. And so now we have the freedom to find whatever information we want to find. But here's where our country especially is having a big problem with the freedom that comes with the internet. Is with freedom comes responsibility.
Starting to sound like Spider-Man.
I mean, it's true though.
True, yes.
Right? With freedom comes responsibility. And the freedom to be able to find whatever you want to find out there comes with the responsibility of being able to teach yourself to spot some BS before you share it. Because we talked a little bit before.
I think that's what we were talking about. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. The ego, right? Is I think that there's some ego play that goes on, because if I see something extreme, right, and I don't vet the information and I send it out or I post it, and then that post goes viral, that hits all of my positive brain chemicals and it makes me feel good and it boosts my ego a little bit. And it's like a big deal. So then that is a negative pattern of then posting more bullshit to get more ego play, right? And I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm not trying to spread misinformation. I'm not trying to spread fake news, or I'm not trying to spread BS, right? But I'm maybe definitely not looking into stuff as much as I should before I post it. And that's the responsibility we have. We have the responsibility of reading the article before we take a screenshot of it and post it on our social media.
Yeah.
Or fact checking some of the stuff, or seeing where it's from before we send it out to 10 friends.
Yeah.
Like we have that responsibility. And if with the freedom comes the responsibility. You don't just get to ignore the responsibility, because everybody has the freedom now. Yeah.
But you can't just blindly trust Google.
No.
At this point, because, even this morning I Googled, what's the most least biased, news sources, right? And this is the list they gave me, the top few: CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, USA Today.
The only one I would ever even possibly agree with on there is Wall Street Journal, but Wall Street Journal leans right in their op-eds. but their fact-based news is very center. But their op-eds lean right. Everything that's an opinion, they're journalists. They have right-leaning journalists. So I wouldn't even agree with that.
Yeah, depending on the subject, I guess.
Yeah. I wouldn't even agree with that. Those are all bullshit.
Yeah. So, and USA Today used to be the paper that you go to a hotel.
Yeah.
That's what you woke up to every single morning.
Yeah.
They dumped in front of your door.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you got to be careful. And maybe that's something that, you know, like you talked about that Rogan podcast where they discussed, browsers.
Yep.
And there's so many people out there that only know Google.
Yeah.
And they think, well, now I can just Google everything.
Yeah.
So how do you mitigate that?
That's tough, man. I mean, people are going to have to start figuring out that, and they're going to have to start being skeptical of everything, right? We talk about that with critical thinking, like, and I hate it. I hate that I am, but man, I'm skeptical of basically everything that I read, whether it agrees with me or not. I'm skeptical of it. And I try to figure out what the base is of it, you know?
Yeah.
Am I great at it? No, I'm not perfect at it, but I try.
Yeah. I mean, everything in life, I mean, you're going to have to apply critical thinking to. I mean, even what I do, you know, I've been having to learn, educate myself on what's going on in the supply chain world. So there's rags for supply chain, right? And well, now everything's digital rags, but even then, some of it is biased. Rags
is lingo for media news sources.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm pretty sure most people got it, but I wanted to specify for them.
Clear it up.
Yeah.
So, you know, being down at the ports, I saw one thing, but then all of a sudden I get a, update from one of the supply chain sources and it completely says the opposite. Well, why?
Yeah.
For what gain is that?
Yeah.
But, it does lean politically.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's, I don't know, something hopefully our listeners can take away from this. And
we can't end today's podcast without talking about troll farms.
Oh, that's right.
Troll farms.
Talk about that, man.
So I sent Martin an article this morning. In 2020 or 2019, 19 of the top 20 Christian Facebook pages were operated by Eastern European or Russian troll farms.
Oh.
And this is not picking on Christians. This is not a Christian thing only. It is any sort of I'm not sure. I would guess that this is any sort of inflammatory social media page, right? Whether it's that or whether it's on the right and it's, the typical liberal, or it is on the left and it's, roasting conservatives or whatever it is. The whole idea, and in 2014, is when this started to show up in the Russian defense system's budget. It started to actually show up for them paying troll farms. And the whole idea is to take the little coals that are out there, the little embers that are out there of disagreement in Western world countries, in democratic countries, and to poke those flames and to fan them and to divide people and to make people pissed off at each other and to make people hate each other and hate more and hate more and hate more. That's 2014. So we're 8 years into now, that was $1 million here, $1 million there in 2014. How much is it now?
Yeah. Well, add that with how the administration's, And
you think Russia's the only one spending that much money? Guarantee China's doing it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody pictures World War III. I think I was talking to my son last night about that. It's just going to be this Red Dawn conventional war. No, it's not.
It's not going to have anything to do with real war.
No, you're going to sway the intellect of the populace.
Yeah.
And that's the way that you control them.
Yep.
So, yeah, cyber attacks is next on that list.
Cyber attacks. I was talking to my brother yesterday. How much cash can you get your hands on right now? If I said, Martin, I need, it's Sunday. You can't go to the bank. You can't go to, let's say you can't go to an ATM. What do you got for cash? A few $1,000.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you can Venmo a limited amount.
Yep.
You can withdraw a limited amount out of the ATM.
That's all digital.
Yeah.
What happens when all of that digital, that's what I'm saying. What happens when all that digital is shut off? Your retirement, my retirement's a big fucking chunk of money.
Yeah.
What happens when I have no more access to that?
Is my crypto affected?
So in theory,
it's independent, right?
It's independent. It wouldn't be, but it's just as likely.
It's still accessed digitally. So
yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
all of a sudden you're shut off.
Yeah, and the thing I'm surprised is last week one of the issues I had to deal with work-wise and supply chain community is one of the big expediters or brokers for brokering containers overseas. They're literally called Expediter International, and they just got cyber attacked, so their systems have been down since last Thursday.
Yep.
And which means there's no visibility on containers coming across. There's no way to manage them as they get here. So it's a huge problem in the supply chain.
Are they actually still fulfilling? Are they still loading ships?
They can't right now because there's no system.
We had that happen. We had that happen last year. One of our big suppliers got hacked. Their system got taken hostage, and they were not able to send us any product for weeks at a time because they couldn't.
Yeah, and that's the problem we got now. I checked even up to yesterday, and there's no update. They're still down. So
yeah.
So we have containers that right now are in the dark.
No idea where they're at.
No clue. So can't get them in. Don't know where they're at. What do you do? So, yeah. I mean, don't think of World War III or any war as it's just going to be, some red dawn.
It's not going to look like Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah. This all has been a long, long game.
Yeah. Yep. PsyOps, programming of populations.
Yeah.
Troll farms, right? Because how else what's the best way to take down a country from the inside?
Yep. Gut it from the inside out.
Gut it from the inside. Make everyone hate everyone else.
Yeah. So remember that as the 2022 midterms coming up here.
Right.
Let me throw that in there.
All right. I think that's a wrap.
All right, man.